Welcome to ForexTV.com. It's Tuesday, December 18th. I'm Remy Hoki for your New York Forex Market Buzz. In New York afternoon trade, euro-dollar is at 1.4406 as of 1:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Sterling dollar is trading around 2.0125, while dollar yen is at the 113.20 level. In today's U.S. economic data, housing starts fell 3.7% in November to a 1.187 million unit annual rate. Starts for October rose and revised 4.2%. Meanwhile, building permits fell 1.5% for the month to a 1.152 million unit rate. Joining me this afternoon is Matthew Strauss, Senior Currency Strategist from RBC Capital Markets. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Good afternoon, Remy.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, no, you're welcome.
Well, earlier in the session, we got news that the ECB injected a record $500 billion in liquidity in a two-week refinancing operation to help open up credit markets. And now we're seeing U.S. equities trading down after the Dow got an initial boost on solid results from Goldman Sachs. But Matthew, traders have pared back on euro longs. So starting with euro-dollar in the FX market, do you expect to see consolidation in the pair?
Yeah, I think that as we move into year-end, we could expect some consolidation. We've seen a good rally in the dollar of late, but for the next week and a half, we expect some consolidation around the 144 level, and ultimately new direction as we go into the new year. But with a low liquidity, even if we do see some sharp moves, we would not read too much into those moves, and I don't think that would be necessarily reflective of underlying market sentiment. So we would now would look for moves in January to really get a better gauge of where that pair is heading.
And moving on to the British currency, cable is off against the dollar and the euro in today's session. And earlier we got UK November CPI, which was up 2.1%. But as the market awaits the BOE minutes coming out tomorrow morning, what's your forecast for the British currency?
Well, I think we've already seen sterling reacted to the slightly softer than expected inflation numbers. And from that perspective, if we look at the BOC minutes, we're still looking for cuts by the Bank of England, especially next year. We think we could see 2, if not 3 cuts from the Bank of England, because the economy remains quite vulnerable, as it depends heavily on the financial sector, and we've seen now globally the financial sector being under pressure. So we do expect those minutes to show some dovish bias, and opening the door for further cuts by the Bank of England.
Well, Matthew, while we're on the topic of inflation and central banks, the CAD has fallen from earlier highs against both the dollar and euro. And today's Canadian CPI rose 0.3% in November following the 0.3% decline in October. So do you forecast a monetary easing and a weaker loonie in 08?
I think that the important number, especially on the Canadian side, was the core inflation, which on a year-on-year basis fell to 1.6%, and the market was looking for a stable 1.8%. So that's definitely giving the Bank of Canada some flexibility, as they now have to not worry too much about the inflationary concerns and can focus more on the downside risk to the economy. So from that perspective, we think there's little in the way of the Bank of Canada to cut rates again. We see a rate cut at January the 22nd, a 25 basis point rate cut, which could be followed, and that's where we see the risk could be followed by even another 25 basis point rate cut. Now, so far that hasn't been fully priced into the market, and as a result, we do think that the Canadian dollar will start struggling against the US dollar as we go into 2008. By the third quarter of 2008, we think there will be some real pressure on the Canadian dollar.
Okay, now before we wrap it up, if we could take a look at dollar yen as well as Aussie yen. In today's session, dollar yen is seeing price action similar to that of the previous session, with dollar yen currently at the 113.20 level. And the lower stock market has been weighing on the yen crosses. So if you could give us your ranges for the dollar yen and the yen against the Aussie.
Yeah, I think as I've indicated earlier, the majors very, very stable. But on the Aussie, with the US equity markets coming off a little bit, we've seen the Aussie yen also falling. But if we look at the ranges for the yen on the upside, we think that the first level would be the 113.53. Is seen as a very important level, resistance level to be broken. If that breaks, we would look at the second resistance level of 114.82. On the support slide, 111.79. And then for Aussie yen, we're looking at a fairly wide range, given that we still see some instability and volatility in that pair, looking at 93 to 100. Now, if we then move on to some of the other major currencies, euro 142.80 to 145.77, and euro yen 159.30 to 165.28. And then, given that we've been talking about sterling, I think for sterling dollar on the support side, the psychological level of 2 is now becoming a very important support level, and on the top side, we're looking at resistance at 204.79.
Okay, Matthew.
So those are the ranges from our side.
Okay, thank you very much for your insight and analysis into the Forex marketplace.
Okay.
That wraps it up for your Forex Market Buzz with Matthew Strauss, Senior Currency Strategist from RBC Capital Markets. I'm Remy Hoki. Join us later this afternoon for PM Exchange right here on ForexTV.com.